the specific levels of military operations we're seeing right now, that would be easier to maybe talk about. So the hope was that it would last 2 weeks, but it's now becoming more apparent that that is not going to happen. Again, this was based on wishful thinking, not based on information that we had regarding what it takes to finish the job. The United States itself is originally mentioned 4 weeks, but now they're talking 5 to 6 weeks. Historically, if you look at what has happened, it has never ended up being the same as what they originally announced. It has always, like, well, not usually, has taken longer than what was originally mentioned. When they give time estimates, we have to look at it as a strategic PR campaign, not just an accurate information that we might be hearing. So when we hear from the officials that this is what they think it's going to take, what we have to take into account is that there's a political game that is being played here as well. So if, for example, my analysis is that this is going to take 6 months, and then I just go say that from day one, there's not going to be any buy-in for, like, it's going to be really hard for me to sell this to the public, right? So you could always just say, well, it's going to take 4 weeks, and then if it doesn't, they were like, oh, okay. I do also have to mention that it is true that things are going faster than anticipated. I mean, it's interesting how often we get surprised regarding how pathetically weak the Islamic Republic has been. During the 12-day war, for example, Israelis managed to, I forgot exactly what the numbers were, but they managed to get air dominance way ahead of schedule. Like, they were actually shocked themselves regarding how fast they managed to get complete air dominance over Iran's airspace. And they this time they got shocked again regarding how fast, like, they're way ahead of schedule. So that is good. I don't think that I don't think anybody could give an accurate estimate. I know a lot of Iranians are hoping that they could be back in Iran and before Nowruz, which is like really, really optimistic. I mean, anything could happen. A lot of Iranians like, can we actually celebrate Nowruz in Iran? I do think that when it comes to military involvement and stability, you could, even if we completely defeat the Islamic Republic, we are going to have to continue fighting what is remaining of the Islamic Republic for a very, very long time. I mean, thinking even years, maybe, right? So the Islamic Republic being toppled doesn't mean that the people who are part of the Islamic Republic have just vanished or evaporated and they don't exist anymore, right? I could see like an ISIS type situation, hopefully not as bad as what happened with, you know, ISIS, but like maybe hopefully a much less significant version of ISIS trying to bring back Islamic rule. There are people within the Islamic Republic who do believe that everything is going according to prophecy, because based on their ideology, for years they have been saying that we will actually be defeated and there will be only a few of us left when the Mahdi arrives. So the Shia ideology has a lot of room for flexibility when it comes to continuing to motivate people to continue to fight. So if they are defeated and they get smaller and smaller in number, some of them are going to believe like, oh, okay, this then everything is going according to plan, because this was exactly the prediction. There's a small number, I forgot what it was, I forgot what that number was. The prophecy is that when Mahdi comes, there's only 114, I think, people that are still fighting for him. So, and that's when the Mahdi comes. So they might think like, okay, then we're getting closer to that moment. It's very interesting because when they're winning, when they think like when they're dominating and they're like winning, they think like, oh, we're getting closer to Mahdi because the army of Mahdi is rising and everything's going to be ready for the Mahdi to come. And then when they're being defeated and they're losing everything, they're like, oh my god, this is going well because the prophecy says that we will be defeated before the Mahdi comes, so we're getting closer to the day that the Mahdi comes, right? But I'm pretty sure they're going to find ways to think that everything is going according to plan. You just need to continue to fight. And, and they have even stories from Muhammad's time when they seemed like they were being defeated and then Muhammad eventually won. So we're like, yeah, this is God is testing us. So I think we're going to have to deal with these, even though the military involvement is not going to be as much as this. However, that would be much better than what we're dealing with right now, because the main source of funding for all of these terrorist groups have been taken away from them, right? So even though these terrorist groups will continue to exist and cause security challenges, the main thing that is going to happen right now is that the oil and gas of Iran will stop funding them, and that will have a major impact in reducing their abilities. Does that make sense?
Hello, Armin. I just have a quick question regarding the rumored CM-302 supersonic anti-ship cruise missiles that China were supposed to deliver to Iran. I don't know if you've spoken anything about this, but this is a supersonic anti-ship missile, and I just wonder, do you think this could have something to do with the US and Israel starting to strike now before these types of missile and weapon systems are delivered to Iran? Because I think once these would have been delivered, uh, it wouldn't been possible to have like uh, aircraft carriers stationed in the region as they have.
Where, where are you getting this information from?
This is from Reuters. I
Let me see.
put it in the chat.
Okay, so reports from last few days indicate that while there is no confirmed evidence to hold on. Let me see the title. Evidence exclusive Iranians deal to buy supersonic anti-ship missiles from China. When is it? No, this is from February 24th.
Yeah,
Did this happen?
I'm not sure. It's just rumors, but no smoke without fire.
So this is a report that there was a deal that was near completion rather than one that was resulted in physical deliveries. The deal. Okay, so let me see. So we have reports. We have a report from February 24th saying Iran nears deal to buy supersonic anti-ship missiles from China. So
Yeah,
now, if we look at it, this Reuters report describes a deal that was near completion rather than one that has already resulted in physical deliveries. According to the report dated February 2026, Iran was in the final stages of negotiations to buy CM 302 supersonic anti ship missiles from China. These are highly advanced weapons that could threaten US naval forces. There is no confirmed evidence that there is specific completed missile systems have been delivered in the last few days. As of March 8th, the focus of intelligence tracking has shifted to components and raw materials. Specifically, two Iranian ships were identified leaving China carrying sodium perchlorate and chemical essentials for making solid rocket fuel. So on March 3rd, 2026, the Chinese Foreign Ministry officially stated that reports of a potential missile sale to Iran were not true. So China denied it.
yeah.
Yeah. So what's your question again regarding this?
Like, do you think, even though it hasn't been confirmed and it's rumors now, do you think these reports could have been trigger for the US and Israel to move now and not like wait another 10 days?
Oh, okay, interesting. The trigger that I what has been the trigger was the information that Israeli intelligence from the ground had with regards to a Khamenei meeting in his
Right.
in his home, like in his bunker. That was the trigger, and we knew that these military operations were planned way ahead of way before this news article came out, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that was the trigger. There's two triggers. What triggered the plan for these military operations, that was the Iranian people coming out early January in the Lion and Sun Revolution,
Yeah.
showing to the Americans that regime change is possible. That was the original trigger that made the planning of this military operation, and then the execution of the military operation was the intelligence that the Israelis had regarding a meeting Khamenei was having. So I don't think this would have made much of a difference if they have received these missiles. Honestly, I don't think it would. I mean, Jeffrey could basically speak to that. Like, would that make any? I don't know if they received it or not, but I don't think it would make much of a difference. Go on, Jeffrey.
So it was one of the triggers, the main trigger. I mean, so we already were going to take down the Mullah regime was planning on engaging in doing mass attacks anyway because their patron states, whether it's Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state or the Chinese Communist Party, had been telling them to do so as a means to sit there and try and stretch out United States-led Western alliances force capability across multiple theaters. The reason we chose to strike at the time we did was in combination of a couple of things. One is that there was Israeli intelligence. Well, first, our intelligence showed that the Mullah regime had upgraded its ballistic missiles and missiles in general from liquid to solid fuel with direct material support from the Chinese Communist Party, not the least of which was 27-foot tall, kind of like blenders to blend the very thing that you talked about and turn solid fuel missiles into, well, liquid fuel missiles into solid fuel missiles, which means they can be stored ready to go. You have very little warning time. It's not like it takes 8 hours to launch. Plus, the tempo that you can maintain in launching mass missiles with solid fuel missiles is roughly about 3 to 5 times what you could with liquid missiles, because liquid missiles take 8 hours to fuel and can't be stored ready to go. Because of that, plus with the intelligence, the Israeli intelligence that showed, and this actually General Avivi had mentioned just prior to the strike, there is a reasonable degree of probability the Mullah regime is marrying chem bio warheads to those missiles to mass launch against Israel, and what that would result in with leakers coming through in an uncontained, uncontrolled chain of escalation. That's why we chose to go at the time we did. The support of anti-ship missiles is a secondary reason, further underwriting the threat, risk, and vulnerability assessment that said we had to strike sooner rather than later. And as far as like the role that brave Iranian protesters showed, that played a role in the nature of the strike, right? In the sense that there is a real chance for regime change in Iran without having US boots on the ground, because the Iranian people showed in no uncertain detail, in mass, sustainably, that there is no connection between the Mullah regime and the Iranian people. This is not the same as Iraq, where it was fragmented and sectarian. Not that we shouldn't have went into Iraq. I'm just saying socioculturally, demographically, this is not the same animal. Yeah. So it was it a contributing factor? It was a secondary contributing factor. As far as the impact of that, absolutely it has impact, right? I mean, long range strike, what is it? Like silkworms and the Noor and all the rest of that can hold things like shipping throughout the Strait of Hormuz at risk, which is one of the things the Mullah regime would do. And we knew that the Mullah regime was trying to hide behind all this stuff to sit there and realize its nuclear capability and then turn itself into a pseudo theocratically motivated version of North Korea. None of that's happening, not under this administration. No, couldn't be. I mean, it would be unacceptable. So, what's the all short and skinny? Was it the primary motivating factor? No. Was it a contributing factor? Absolutely.
All right. So my question is, it seems like the regime is really, really, really falling apart. Like I heard that IRGC members just fleeing from the country, like dressed up as women, like every like member of IRGC, like high rank, gives different orders on the places, but still like other media like tries to make it look like the regime is still strong. So I just would be glad to like hear something like Armin, if you have some, I don't know, insider information or like a better observation for that. So this is one question, and then I have the other part of it.
Yeah. So I mean the attack. So yeah. So the attacks by United States and Israel and the Islamic Republic have really been devastating. The people that have been removed, I don't know if how to explain. These are people that are irreplaceable. Like there is no the Islamic Republic right now is trying to act like whoever you kill, we have replacement for it, and there's basically it doesn't even hurt because there's enough people to basically be able to do the job. There is no replacement for the people that Israeli and American strikes have been taken out. These are the people with the intelligence, with the experience, years of having being involved in multiple wars, multiple operations, with the respect and the connections necessary. Because remember, in Iran, military commanders are not just military commanders, there's also political personalities. And you get the position that you have because of the connection and the credibility and the leverage, the political leverage that you have as well. So taking out these people creates a huge power vacuum. Not only that, the main threat to the Islamic Republic is infighting. Infighting. And a lot of people don't understand, like underestimate this. Like we see things exploding and the Iranian people rising and think like, oh, that's what's going to take the Islamic Republic down, right? But all of this, the main way that this contributes, like they are threatening to the Islamic Republic, but not directly. Like the Iranian people coming into the streets and all of these attacks by United States and Israel, the main way that eventually it will bring down the regime is when the regime forces turn on each other, right? And for the past couple of years, I've been on the Persian channel. The main thing that we have been following is the infighting, right? We have been always looking for signs of infighting because we always knew that that is their greatest weakness. And this is why, for example, Princess of Pahlavi has always been focusing on defections more than anything else, because that's what gets you to the 0 hour of the revolution, when there's enough instability and division among the regime forces that some of them will basically realize whatever you see externally, they have ways for them to think that they could respond to that, right? If you see things blowing up, they're like, okay, aerial attacks, things blowing up, that is not gonna that's we could resist it. Like at the end of the day, there's many of us, some of us die, and there's enough of us there to be able to continue, and the regime has enough propaganda to convince them that we're fine, we got this, right? And then the Iranian people coming into the streets, you shoot them, they go home. The regime has enough propaganda to show its own people that we got this, right? But it's really hard to maintain that propaganda when the people who are following these leaders, they see them fighting. When they see them fighting, they're like, okay, this is a house of cards, right? If you tell them that Americans can, if the people who are constantly telling you that the Americans and the Israelis won't be able to topple us, and these people who are coming into the streets, they're Israeli spies or whatever, and we will get rid of them and it will be fine, you will believe that. All like, if the people who constantly believe that, when they see that mommy and daddy are fighting, they're like, holy fuck, there's something wrong here, right? And again, them fighting, if it's between the hardliners and the reformers, that will not have that effect, because the reformers will be considered Zionist agents and enemies anyways by the hardliners. It's the fight between hardliner and hardliner that will convince many people who are still loyal to the regime that things are falling apart, and it will cause people to either not support the regime or maybe even defect or at least run away, right? So for the past couple of years, that's what we have been monitoring on our Persian channel regarding signs of division and infighting and defection. And what we have noticed, like, so for example, ever since the Massa uprising, the fact that the Islamic Republic seems to be enabled to enforce hijab laws in Iran has caused a lot of division, right? The 12-day war caused a lot of division because some people think that they didn't respond to Israel strongly enough, right? What we have noticed among in all of these years is that the main thing that's kept everything together, the duct tape that was keeping all of this together was Khamenei, right? Because once Khamenei said something, everybody got on the same page. So, for example, when I was on the Telegram accounts of these people, like looking what they're saying, the way they talk to each other, there were like there's so many disagreements, and then Khamenei will come out and give a speech, and the next day they all got on the same page and they would stop fighting each other over that. So Khamenei was the main uniter, and there's nothing that could replace that. What you're noticing right now is that what acts as the supreme leader right now is the council of the supreme leadership, right? Which the main member of it is the nobody that is Pezeshkian, which is crazy, right? That Pezeshkian, who is the most irrelevant politician right now in the Islamic Republic, is the head, according to the constitution right now, is the head of the council of the supreme leadership. So right now we're dealing with the Schrodinger's supreme leader, right? Because the IRGC has apparently decided that the supreme leader is Mushtaba Khamenei, but officially there hasn't been any announcement of the supreme who's the new supreme leader. And so the council of the supreme leadership according to the constitution of the Islamic Republic, is meant to be acting as the supreme leader. And we saw a major source of division right now because Pezeshkian, not as the president, but as the spokesperson for the Council of the Supreme Leadership, came out and said that we're not going to be attacking any more countries in the region. And within minutes after, the IRGC was like, who the fuck are you? And they started attacking countries in the region. And not only that, Ege, which is the second member of the Council of Supreme Leadership, he came out and said, we're going to continue attacking the countries in the region. So even within the Council of the Supreme Leader, the council that meant to be acting as the Supreme Leader right now, the two main members, which is Pezeshkian and Ege, they're not even on the same page. And the IRGC is acting like the supreme leadership doesn't even matter anymore. They want the council of experts, the assembly of experts that is meant to be deciding the supreme leader, is they're acting like that's irrelevant. And the IRGC is going to dictate who's going to be the next supreme leader. So remember, for years I've been telling you that we're seeing a transition of power from the office of the supreme leader to the IRGC, and IRGC is becoming more and more powerful. And I said that with the death of Khamenei, that transition will be complete. And now you can see with the announcement of Pezeshkian that we're going to stop attacking the countries in the region and the IRGC continuing the attack, we could see that that is the official announcement of the irrelevancy of the supreme leadership position and the IRGC being the main decision maker from now on. Here's all the good news, but let me also tell you the bad news is that what I'm concerned about is the ability for the Islamic Republic to just continue shooting into crowds of people, right? Even with all of these weaknesses, right? So everything is going according to plan, and the Islamic Republic is getting weaker and weaker every single minute, right? And uh, it's really bad. And apparently, we haven't even started the main parts of this military operation, at least according to the Americans, right? However, what I'm concerned about that it doesn't take that much to just hand over some guns to some besiegis and tell them not to wait for any commands. If you see people protesting, just shoot. Forget about having a commander. Forget about like getting intelligence. Forget about having a base of operations. Just take these guns home, keep an eye, like even if you don't hear any orders from us, if you see people coming into the streets, make sure you're there. That is, I don't know how effective that is going to be, and I don't know what the plan is to deal with that. That is the wall right now in our way. So as effective as the American and Israeli strikes have been, at the end of the day, they're taking out the Basiji bases, they're taking out the IRGC bases, they're taking out the command structure, they're taking out the intelligence operations that they have behind the scenes. And that is going to significantly reduce the suppressing power of the Islamic Republic. And it's going to cause mass defections and people who are going to run away. I saw a video, I saw an audio, I listened to an audio of this soldier calling his dad, crying and saying that, dad, they're killing everybody, everybody's being taken out. And the dad was like, take off your uniform. The dad was telling his son, take off your uniform. And the son was crying. The son was, sorry, I'm so sorry, dad, I'm so sorry, dad, like, I love you, like the soldier, right? And the dad is like, take off your uniform. The dad was telling him that I can't come pick you up right now because if they're everything is being taken out. And the son is like, I understand. And the dad was like, make sure you take off your uniform. The son is like, I already have. But the problem is that it takes a very small percentage of them willing to do that, especially from the Basijis, for them to be able to cause a lot of damage. And I think that we need to actually come up with, I don't know what the strategy is. Like, there needs to be a plan. I'm sure there is a plan, but whatever the plan is, that hasn't been communicated to the protesters. It hasn't been communicated to protesters. I mean, obviously, the Americans and Israelis know what they're doing, and they have a much more intelligence than us when it comes to the attitude and the readiness of the Iranian people on the ground. And when that moment comes, I'm pretty sure they have already their models regarding exactly what's going to be happening. But whatever planning they have, I don't like when I go to speak to my Persian speaking audience. There is no plan regarding, like, okay, so you guys, the protesters will have the numbers on their side, but the people on the other side, they have their armed, and the Iranian people are not armed. The problem is that if the Iranian people get their hands on some weapons, that would make the situation very complicated, because then, I mean, your enemy is going to be wearing plain clothes, right? And now the protesters are wearing plain clothes and your enemy is wearing plain clothes. And if we have now the understanding that some protesters are armed, with that understanding, the besiegers could just come into the middle of the protesters as a protester, and then when the time comes, just maybe shoot them from behind or something like that. And it's going to also be very difficult for the Americans and Israelis to identify who's a protester and who's a besieged. So these are the challenges that we're dealing with. And I saw Gary and Jeffrey wanted to talk about this. Gary is looking for the.
And this is not going to be up to the Israelis or the US CENTCOM forces to pick out who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. It's going to be up to the people who look Iranian and speak Farsi to be able to figure out who they can trust and who they can't. US CENTCOM and IDF are not going to be on the ground to do this. And this is where some of the scenarios that we've been hinting at that are actually already in progress of moving material into Iran from the periphery, from the peripheral provinces, to be able to have an organized fighting force take up the slack. This is not going to be pleasant. And there just is no way that you can stop this from happening. The thing that you can do is abbreviate it. And that's the goal right now, is to abbreviate it. But this is where having 10 non-IRGC and besieged Iranians and one IRGC besieged Iranian, that's where those numbers come into play, because you're going to, if you were taking self-defense training, Krav Maga training, for instance, you know that the first thing you do when you have one bad guy is you fan out around them. You don't all stand in front and you don't all run away. You have to stand your ground. You have to surround them 360 degrees, and somebody is going to take them out. They can't attend to 10 people at once.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when it comes to identifying the people, you're very right when it comes to the Iranian people being the people with the best information on the ground to try to identify who's who. I remember, for example, the like in some of the other uprisings that we had, the Basijis were wearing these bags in a very specific way to be able to identify each other, or that who's who. And
Yes.
the protesters immediately identified that, and immediately social media came out and says, guys, anybody who's wearing their bag like this from right to left or something, they're a Basiji, right? So
And
it was really quick how fast they managed to figure that out.
Armin, this is the thing. This is why, Jeffrey and I and others have been hammering home the point, making sure that there is communication on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis in each town, in each province, to maintain a sense of trust, but also to share those signals that who sounds like they're a Basij, who sounds like they're IRGC, but they're trying to hide it. You know the nuance of the language because you speak Farsi. I'm talking to the people on the ground. That's really where that informational sharing and that sense of community trust to be able to identify an outsider, that's where that's going to come in. That's the only way to abbreviate this.
Yeah. Another thing is that if it becomes difficult for the Iranian people to identify them, it's also going to be difficult for them to identify each other, because we have had examples of Basijis shooting Basijis thinking that they're protesters. We have had that before. So I mean, at the end of the day, we could get to a situation where we have the intelligence operations, you know, supporting the protesters, and they don't anymore. So there's also that.
And
Like that's something that yeah, go on.
that's exactly it. So this is really where, for those Iranians who have been finding ways to get sat phones, to get Starlink setups, to be able to go into the Mossad website that's been provided to them, or the CIA one, that's where you're going to get real-time intelligence that's going to be able to say, oh, from the sky, this is what we can see going on. We need you to be aware of that. Move your people in this direction as opposed to that direction. That is an intelligent counterinsurgency by the Iranian
Mhm.
people. That's the only thing that will foreshorten this.
Yeah,
But
and
there
one
will
other
be
thing
more and
before.
more material coming in. I can guarantee you that.
Okay, okay. One more thing before we go to Jeffrey. What kind of what kind of material?
Materiel,
Oh,
IEL. Yeah,
okay. Thank
yeah.
you. So one thing else is, like, when it comes to the Artesh, the hope is that before, or maybe at some point in the middle of this, a lot of this will go so much smoother. If I don't know when or if that's going to happen, but I know there's going to be loss of life. There's no avoiding that. We're talking about trying to reduce the loss of life, right? And I think that this is why Princess of Pahlavi constantly has been focusing on defections, because if we get defections, we will save so many lives, and this will go a lot easier. Yeah.
And defectors ultimately will be able to, you talk about disarmament, demobilization, and then reintegration. That's the key here. Like what happened in Northern Ireland, what happened in Kosovo, in the Balkans. That's that reintegration of people who take the heroic decision to stop being a killer of the Iranian people. That person will go through a retraining period, but ultimately they will be remembered as somebody who helped to turn the tide of battle. And those heroes need to be acknowledged, even though they had a bad past, they made an appropriate change. But some of those people, when they do get turned over, somebody in the crowd is going to recognize them, and some of them are going to be slaughtered because that person just so happened to kill my brother or my sister or my father or it's going to happen. But the Iranian people, this is where their culture, their civilization, this is where if they band together, maintain close communication now while everything is
Yeah.
infiltrating from the periphery, this is really where they can shine as a people and really stand out in the annals of history.
Yeah, this is why division within the Islamic Republic is so important. Okay, it's really important for people to understand that a lot of people within Iran who are still fighting for the Islamic Republic, they're in a bubble, right? The reason why they're not defecting is because they still have not been convinced that this is game over, that this is the end for the Islamic Republic. So signaling to them that this is game over is going to, like, my suspicion is that we're going to see all of a sudden like some defection, some defection, some defection, but then there's a turning point that will happen that you're going to see mass defections. And that will happen when it becomes clear. I mean, it might be clear to you guys here, but it needs to be clear to them that the Islamic Republic is falling. And that's why division within the Islamic Republic is so important, because then they will see it. They will see it from their own sources rather than from our sources.
The difference here, if you go back to World War II, when Emperor Hirohito told everybody to lay down their arms, that was a divine emperor who did that. Nevertheless, there were still samurais hiding in the jungles until the 1960s and 70s in various islands and the Philippines. The problem with Islam is that you have people who believe that they really want to get to paradise and they're committed to getting there. They will never turn over. But you can't have perfection. But what you can have is the majority of Iranians stand up, recognize what they've done well, what they've not done well, reintegrate, and get to the point that these people who will never go away, we know that they will pop their heads up somewhere. Those people will still be the minority, but you'll have an intact Iran rather than a balkanized Iran.
Hey, Jeff.
You guys touched on a lot of the things I've been mentioning out throughout some of the previous shows. So first, like, there's two lines of effort. I'm going to bounce off some of the things you said that kind of are being looked at and should be doubled down on. Why I keep sending, I know you're inundated with emails. I just sent them to you and Goldie and everybody else just to make sure everybody's in the loop. So the first requirement, there's a reason that President Trump outlined the need for documentation of the assholes in the IRGC, Besiege, and other co-aligned groups that were involved in violence against Iranian protesters, to be able to weed out wheat from chaff, right? Post Second World War Germany, there is a big difference between rehabilitating members of the Wehrmacht and or the Waffen SS, and they had to discern or differentiate between those two. The second, and so you have to look at defectors. That said, you have to be sure that the ones you're looking at don't have blood on their hands and separate those. Like they're the Mullah regime's version of the Wehrmacht versus the like elements of, let's say, Artesh and all that, and say the IRGC or the more doctrinaire elements of the IRGC. The second line of effort is centers around training elements within the broader Iranian diaspora, because they have the linguistic and cultural intelligence, right? Inherently, just by being members of the broader Iranian diaspora, to set up neo-Savak and thereby then provide security in a post-Mullah transition period. So you train the cadre outside of Iran amongst Iranian diaspora that then go in and train the trainers that train the agents, so that they can sit there and have like a post-Mullah, like transitionary Iranian period of version of the DHS or FBI. And the idea is to minimize the amount of disruption that residual elements within the IRGC, Besiege, or say other insecurity flows from around the region could play in trying to upset Iranians, or let's say undermine the maximum like sweetness of the victory Iranians have paid such a high price for. And to that end, there's a lot of good stuff there. I mean, so you're not going to have the idea of having like US or Israeli, well, you might have some Israeli boots on the ground. Like having a strong ground force footprint outside of Iran, first off, like it probably wouldn't be helpful for Iran. That said, the United States has like 2 decades of experience in coin or counterinsurgency operations. And I'm almost done with that strategy. I'll send it to you, Armin, you and Goldie, and make sure to give it to Tusi and the rest of them. Using, say, resources that are, what is it that, when you have, not when you isolate, when you freeze assets of the Ayatollah and all them, and use that to set up these different facilities, what I call fighting facilities. to help develop those people. I actually did that for Ukraine. That would allow you to have whole groups of these people then that could provide security for Iranians so that the transitionary period is as smooth as it can be, right? So in other words, it's like you're training amongst the broader Iranian diaspora their version of DHS and the FBI, so that way it's ready to go right after the Mullah regime falls. You have these people ready to go. It's not like you have a bunch of white guys from Boston trying to sit there and help out, Iranians, although I'm not saying they wouldn't do that. I'm just saying, like they can't read Farsi. They have no idea they don't know they have no cultural intelligence. Iranians do. And that very much should be done. And there's already being set up to do that. I shared it with Gary. Yeah. Like that's right on the money.
I heard that the Iranian women's football players were protesting in some manner by not singing the national anthem. I don't know if they did anything more than that. But today, as they were departing the competition to go back home to Iran, they were having some signs from within their bus, like some SOS signs, and there were Iranians on the ground around the bus, and they chanted like "Save our girls, save our girls." And the crowd tried to block the bus, like they can't go back to Iran because they will be killed. They had been threatened on state TV, right, in Iran the other day, like they were traitors and that they should be harshly punished or something like that. So it seems like they didn't want to go, and the crowd tried to stop the bus. The Australian police, they moved in and scattered these protesters, and so the bus could actually drive away towards the airport. And I just, is it really that they don't want to leave Australia, but they are forced? Like, what's the bus driver doing? Are they gonna force them on the plane, or like, it's just a weird story? And I was wondering, because this is also important. That Iran, they or IRGC, right? They have already released prisoners here and there. We don't know if it's true, but we know that some prisoners that's been released are true, right? I think it was Susie the other day who had some friend of hers that was actually released. So I guess that the IRGC wants to do this for signaling, like, oh, you see, we're releasing prisoners. We released 200 yesterday. We are not this murderous regime and blah, blah, blah. So what could the IRGC possibly do with these football players when they come back home? I guess they would just release them and see signaling like, yeah, we're not crazy. Or are they really in danger? So yeah, let's, if anybody has any comment on that, that would be interesting. Thank you.
Yes. So what happened was that these women on Iran's national team, they're in Australia, they refused to sing I don't want to call it the national anthem. It's the Islamic Republic's anthem. They refused to sing it as a way to protest against the Islamic Republic. And what happened is that this famous TV personality of the Islamic Republic State TV came out and said that these people need to be punished and made an example of. So this is the guy. I think you guys know this person because we have been dealing with him a couple of times. So let me just read what he is saying. So he's saying you punish traitors harder during war. Whoever takes one wrong step against the country during war, you have to respond to them harder. Like the story of our women's national team not singing the anthem. Not singing the anthem is the highest order of treason. Both people and officials must treat them as traitors. Right traitors on their foreheads and punish them severely.
و خیانت باید رو پیشونی اینا بمونه جدا باید باشون برخورد درست حسابی هم بشه.
All right, so that was that. And then these are when the girls were, so he's saying Iranian women's football national team just used sign language to communicate help. They're being held hostage and threatened by the regime. The regime in Iran labeled them traitors on national TV and promised a severe punishment once they return from Australia. So my understanding is that this is the bus in Australia. I don't know if this is correct or not, but they're taking them maybe to the airport. And it says, Save the Lionesses. The Iranian women's football players showed a help sign after their last game in Gold Coast, Australia. So let me know, guys. I don't know what the help sign looks like because I can't identify it. So if you guys see anything, let me know. So this is from inside the bus. And these are people running after the bus trying to help the girls get out. There's a petition for this. If you guys want to sign the petition, I will post the link to this in the chat. Again, or if you're watching this later, you could search for change.org, provide protection for Iran's women's national football team. Here's a link in the chat. So regarding how the Islamic Republic, like why can't they just free them? I mean, I don't know why Australian government hasn't stepped in already to help these girls. I have no idea why they have not done that. They should do that. But somebody earlier, John, you weren't here, was asking. Oh, Danny, it was Danny. Danny asked earlier, why would these girls get on the bus anyways? Like, why can't they just refuse to leave? And I explained to Danny that the Islamic Republic has years of experience with this because there are many athletes who, when the Islamic Republic takes us out of Iran, they would want to maybe stay. But the Islamic Republic has mastered the art of intimidation tactics, especially with their families, and they have a lot of protocols and in place with regards to how to make sure, like, try their best. I mean, sometimes some people slip, but they know they have a lot of experience with regards to when the athletes leave Iran to try to make sure they all come back, right? I mean, North Korea does that as well with their athletes. So before we go to Gary, because I know Gary wanted to add something, did I even answer your question, Joanne? Like, did you have any follow-up questions?
No, that answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I
And
guess we have
Gary,
to
you wanted
follow to see what's going to happen, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
and thanks, Armin. Very quickly, and Johan, appreciate what you were saying, but home is where the heart is. And if all of your family is back home in Iran and you are thinking about defecting, but meanwhile somebody on the bus is telling you, oh, we know where your parents are, we know where your family is. It's as Armin said, this has been going on for decades, and they have people in prisons who may be relatives of some of these soccer players, and they could next send them videos of them being shot in the head. It's that serious. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Daniel is new here. Hi, Daniel. Welcome to the community. Okay. If you ever want to speak, you could talk in the chat, but you could also signal to us that you want to speak like this by raising your hand. Okay. Once I leave, like, I think what the system, because I'm not here, but once I leave, there's no time constraints. Like, you guys could have hours and hours of talking once I leave. It's only the time limitations are for when I'm here, because I need to go get back to Goldie's show. But again, for people who might be new here, the only time this conversations here stop is when the last two people here leave. Okay. But this could go for as long as anyone needs it. And yeah, Daniel, again, welcome to our community. I mean, I know you were.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you for. Okay. All right. There was Danny. Was there anyone else? Oh yeah, Dajjal. Dajjal was here, and then I have something that I wanted to add.
Hey, what's up, guys? I know exactly what's going to happen to those girls when they get back to Iran. They're going to rape them. They're going to murder them. That's what they're going to fucking do. It's as simple as that. And probably kill their families anyway. I hate to say it, but that's what probably
No,
what's going to happen.
Joe, like, you have to be careful, because when you say that and it doesn't happen, people were like, "Oh, okay, then they didn't do that. I guess they're nice." Don't just go with the most extreme thing that could come to your mind and say you're certain that that happens. There's a limitation for regards to the Islamic Republic. I mean, if they could be this cruel all the time, then they wouldn't last this long. Like, they have to. They only are this cruel when they are really, really desperate and scared. Like, you can't just be this cruel just randomly all the time and survive. Like, every time the Islamic Republic is this cruel, it pays a heavy price for it. It gets more people defecting. It gets more of its own followers turning against it. So it can't just, like, they have done some of the most evil shit ever imaginable, but they do it when they're very, very scared and very, very desperate. They don't use it all the time, just willy-nilly.
Yeah, I got you, man. You make a good point. It was more of an emotional reaction, I'm just pissed off.
Yeah, I understand that, and I understand that, and I appreciate you, like, caring so much. I really do appreciate that. The issue is that when we predict things like that, and then the Islamic Republic doesn't do it, then people will be less caring. So imagine if they're now in prison and just being held in prison. People were like, "Well, they're not dead. They're not being raped. So I guess that's good." Even though that's really is really bad, and we try to free them, people will be satisfied with that because we predicted something far worse, right?
Right. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, there's a lot of retards who think that way. You're right. You got a point. Yeah. Duly noted. Yeah. I was also going to say, yeah, I hope that gets worked out somehow. That I hope Trump and Bibi know about this. They could do something about it. Maybe say, "Okay, hey, bro, let him come here for a while. We'll take it." That's what I'd like to see. But yeah, we'll see. But I was also going to say, or we were talking about Cuba. I agree with Jeffrey. I think the Cubans would appreciate being freed. I think, given their ties to terrorism and all the commies and jihadis they're friends with, I think getting rid of their regime would be excellent. It would just be good for the Cuban people, which it would, but it would also be in our interest to do so. So I'm with Jeffrey 100% on that. And I was going to say too, yeah, you got these guys like these people wearing Che Guevara shirts and all that shit. All these lefty retards. Che Guevara wasn't only just an anti-black racist. He was also extremely anti-gay. He killed gay people, and the Castros actually imprisoned gays and put them basically into camps to try to set them straight, if you will. And when that didn't work, they just killed them. Under Batista, gays were actually had a much better deal. In fact, there were actually gay nightclubs in Cuba run by the mafia of all things. And those were also shut down when Castro got into power because he thought there were a bunch of degenerates. And wanted to persecute them, just like a lot of Marxist regimes did. That's all I was saying. Yeah, and the Soviet Union did too. Just throw that in there.